Hi, welcome to the latest Central Careers Hub blog, and I'm going to be talking today about an issue that relates to Oxbridge and the colleges of Oxford and Cambridge and actually getting in. This has come about because of David Lammy's report, which was titled 7 Years Has Changed Nothing at Oxbridge. In fact, diversity is even worse. So this report has convinced me really that we should maybe think about something different, a different way of doing admissions at Oxford and Cambridge, and should at least try out something that's substantially different. And rather than, I think what's happened in the past, people trying to pick holes in when people have made criticisms of the Oxford and Cambridge admissions processes, I think we should actually treat this as a bit of a watershed rather than finding flaws in Lammy's arguments. So I'm not going to repeat anything from Lammy's report. That's it. It is what it is, and it's out there in the media. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of a recap on what actually goes on in terms of what applicants have to do to prepare, and then I'm going to then make the charge that I think Oxford and Cambridge are hypocritical in their approach to admissions and their reasons for not changing their admissions process. So, I want to state that I'm not one of these people who bears a grudge to Oxford and Cambridge. Not at all. And if you meet their admission staff, they're the nicest people, really friendly, and I think they're trying to do their best in a system that they can't themselves change internally. And I'm personally ambivalent about people applying to Oxford and Cambridge. As a professionally qualified careers advisor, I think it's part of my ethical duty not to think that getting into Oxford and Cambridge is more special than, say, getting onto an apprenticeship or going to some other sort of university. I came to write the GRIST framework, which helps applicants prepare for Oxford and Cambridge admissions, as a careers advisor trying to deconstruct the process for my students and debunk the whole industry that surrounds this issue. So in terms of understanding Oxbridge admissions, there's a few things going on which we've pulled into this framework called GRIST. So people need to understand the grades that they need to get, both at GCSE and A level, and relevant subjects they might need to take. They need to understand that they need to do wider reading, away from the syllabus, or do extra maths and sciences work to stretch themselves. They need to prepare for the interview, but not in a regurgitative way. They need to be put through a sort of a mock interview situations. It's a bit like an exam out loud, so they need to practice what that involves. And schools and colleges need to have systems to help set this all up, because if people don't go through a mock interview, they won't really know what to expect. People need to be not so concerned about their personal statement, but they do need to have that sort of obsessive love about their subject. And they need to prepare for the tests, which are taken for many different courses. And it's the tests, it's all about learning through doing. It's not about regurgitating stuff. It's putting them through the process so they know what to expect when the real thing happens. Now you imagine that you haven't got any cultural support, you haven't got any social support, and you haven't got any school or college support, think about how this must be so off-putting to young people trying to go through this process, or if they go through it, how stressful it is if they don't have this support. Now, the schools I work in, we have systems, and these systems are not being applied in the UK across the board, and I can see that there's many barriers for people, say for example from my hometown in Portsmouth, to even getting to the 3 A's at A-level stage. Actually you need like 2 A stars and an A, or an A star and 2 A's, compared with many of the students I now work with in London. And again, I'm trying to be fair in this. This is an admissions process that is more wide-ranging than many other university selection processes, which just use personal statements and grades. And occupational psychologists will say that the more different things you put the applicant through, the more likely you are to get a suitably qualified applicant. If you meet staff from Oxford and Cambridge colleges, they will repeatedly and endlessly say what makes us unique is that their courses and their research, they're constantly questioning, they're constantly analysing, they're constantly criticising, they're constantly challenging assumptions about whatever issues that they are looking at. And my charge is that they are not applying this uniqueness to their admissions process. Staff at Oxford and Cambridge may say, we've been analysing our admissions processes in depth for many years, since the Laura Spence saga in 2000, for example. But I would suggest all that's happened is that there's been a tweaking of the process. I now think, with the watershed of Lammy's work, that something drastically different needs to be tried, but done in a way that it compares with the existing system. Because of the college system that both Oxford and Cambridge have, is it not possible to have some colleges carrying on with the existing system and some colleges trying something completely different? So, for example, people don't apply till they've got their A-level results. They can apply if they get 2 A stars and an A, or if they meet certain criteria, such as free school meals or live in certain locations, they can apply with 3 A's. That's all that's asked for. Their names are put into a lottery, and then they're drawn out. And that's all that is asked. And let's see what goes on with those students, say for 5 years. Let's compare one group with the other group. And that doesn't seem to be happening. And I'm sure admission staff will have explored this option at Oxford and Cambridge. I'm absolutely sure. And then there will have been logistical issues, what the Daily Telegraph might say, existing relationships, upsetting those, and funding issues, and people will have drawn back from some more drastic looking at admissions like this. But I would say, if Oxford and Cambridge were looking at an issue, say like lithium batteries, and researching this, and whatever they were doing wasn't yielding any worthwhile results, they wouldn't endlessly and pointlessly try to tweak what they're doing. They might keep some researchers on the existing work, and then they might get some researchers to take a totally new approach, or scrap what they were doing and move over to the new approach. They just wouldn't endlessly carry on something that's clearly not getting what we want. So Oxford and Cambridge universities, I'm putting it to you that you are not practicing what you preach. I still think you're fantastic, wondrous universities, and for certain passionate, love of subject, nerdy students, you are totally the right place. But because you're not applying the same intellectual rigour to your admissions processes as you apply to everything else that you do, Oxford and Cambridge, on the question of hypocrisy, in my view, you're guilty as charged.